the agreement that Chamberlain got at Munich was regarded by millions of people in Britain as a lifesaver. They had been saved by the Prime Minister from imminent destruction. And it was against that background that Churchill and a few others spoke out against what the Prime Minister had done. This was an act of real courage, political courage.
Churchill delivered his disaster of the first magnitude speech. It was a response to Neville Chamberlain's failure to stop Germany's occupation of Czechoslovakia after the Munich Agreement, which he'd signed with Hitler the previous week. David Reynolds is the author of Mirrors of Greatness, Churchill and the Leaders Who Shaped Him, which is out next week. He joins us now. Good morning to you, David.
Morning, Steve.
A lot of people said that the appeasement, how Chamberlain behaved, was kind of inevitable, and there weren't many dissenting voices. Was Churchill a rare voice? Were there many dissenting voices as to what went on at Munich?
There were some 30 MPs who were not happy with what had happened, and they abstained in the vote. These are Tory MPs against the leader of their own party. And Churchill and 14 others sat ostentatiously in the middle of the Commons chamber to show that they were abstaining. They debated whether to actually vote against their own party leader, but in the end, they decided to abstain.
In 1938, would Churchill have felt it likely that just a couple of years later, he'd be the Prime Minister?
He always had a belief, a strong belief in his almost providential destiny to become prime minister. This was his lifetime ambition. But these were years when he was, as he said, in the wilderness politically, opposing the national government, which is led by Baldwin and Chamberlain, sometimes on quixotic causes. For example, Churchill advocated or strongly supported Edward VIII remaining king. Against the wishes of the government and increasingly the whole country in terms of the impossibility of him having the marriage that he wanted. But Churchill also was a consistently demanded rearmament against Germany, Nazi Germany. He could see the dangers of German militarism. And this was, he felt that the government was simply being too slow. And what happened after the Munich Agreement was that Chamberlain really was not so much concerned about Czechoslovakia. What he wanted to ensure was that there wasn't, or this faraway country of which we know little, didn't become the cause of another war between Britain and Germany, a war in which, and I think this is often forgotten, the assumption was that the first act of the war would be an overwhelming German bombing attack on London, with predictions of 150,000 casualties in the first week. So the agreement that Chamberlain got at Munich was regarded by millions of people in Britain as a lifesaver. They had been saved by the Prime Minister from imminent destruction. And it was against that background that Churchill and a few others spoke out against what the Prime Minister had done. This was an act of real courage, political courage, particularly against that background when Chamberlain is regarded as the savior of the nation.
Yeah, and obviously in hindsight, it appears amazingly prophetic, but I imagine there were some awkward moments at the time. David, good to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
That's David Reynolds, the author of Mirrors of Greatness, Churchill and the Leaders Who Shaped Him, which is out next week.